This is Kali Persall, editor of Institutional Investing and Infrastructure. And joining me today is John Apostolides, an investment partner at Palistar. Thank you so much, John, for joining us today. Can you just start with a brief introduction of yourself?
Sure, I'd be happy to. And thank you for having me on this program. So, I am an investment partner at Palistar Capital. We are a digital infrastructure investment firm. That's really all we do. I've been with the firm now for 7 years. I've spent my entire 20 plus career either as an advisor, investor, or capital raiser within the digital infrastructure and telecom and communications ecosystems. So, it's these are things that I love to talk about, love to be involved in daily, and again, pleasure to be speaking with you this afternoon.
Thank you so much. So today we'll be talking about closing the digital divide. So just to kick off, how do you think about the role of fiber in enabling 5G and beyond?
Sure. I think even before that, I think there's a couple of things to think about. Fiber has a massive role here, as do other technologies, but they all really interplay with one another. So I think it's one thing to think about, and one thing that's very important. It's not one and not the other. They do really play well with each other, whether it's fiber or wireless or satellites or what have you, even data centers. They do really connect, and that's a very important thing. And I think even stepping back even further, as you think about, you use the phrase digital divide, there's some really staggering statistics. I'll start with some very high level statistics. I mean, there are approximately 5 billion people throughout the world who have some sort of mobile device, and roughly the same number that have electricity. Yet maybe 3.5 to 4 billion of those people have running water. So you really think about that, and then think about, what is the adage now? Is it food, water, shelter? Or is it broadband, food, water, and shelter? And broadband has really become part of that, pyramid of self-actualization. It's really become a utility in some ways, and even a necessity in other ways. So I think that's very important. As you think about the gap, bridging the digital divide, there's ways to do this. Some are economical, some are not. There are subsidies. We've heard about the BEAD program and other things like that throughout the United States and various territories. There's other programs throughout the world that are doing that as well. And it's really important because fiber is a technology that really is energy efficient. There's less repair work needed. It lasts longer. It really enables more community engagement, education, narrows the economic disparity, and provides healthcare opportunities for people who just don't necessarily have them. And so it really is the information superhighway. And at the end of the day, like I said, when you need, whether it's a satellite connection, it connects somewhere. A base station, a ground station, you still need some sort of fiber connection to get the data elsewhere. A data center where the data is going to be processed or interconnected, you're still going to need the fiber to connect there. And then, quite frankly, when you look at the usage, you and I are using multiple devices a day. If you have a home, you're using 40 or 50. Even in a small apartment, you're using 5 or 10, and you're not even realizing it. You need throughput. You need the ability for data to transmit through there, basically bigger pipes. And then there's also things like fixed wireless communications, which are point to point in some ways, but you still need fiber to get there. You still need fiber for the backhaul, for the actual from the tower and to other points of access. So that's just one way to start and how to think about bridging the digital divide.
Overbuild and competition, those are some of the key concerns when it comes to fiber.
Sure.
What are some strategies for navigating that in your view?
There are approximately 10 million new passings in the US in 2024, depending on your source, depending on how you think about it. And there's constantly upgrades, brownfield, greenfield, new builds, and so forth. And ultimately, in most markets, whether it's urban, suburban, or rural, or and beyond, people are trying to get to the home as economically possible as they can. You look at some of the largest carriers in the country, they are leveraging unique transaction structures, right, in support of these wholesale fiber to the home platforms. And they're very healthy, they're very strong companies. They do have other obligations, right? They have dividends, they have debt payments, they have other things they need to spend capital expenditures on. So they've brought in really blue chip financial partners, other strategic partners to help with these builds. And it's not because they can't do it on their own. They can. But this is a local game in a lot of ways too. And so as they're expanding, they have local market knowledge. They have local leaders. They can build out, and again, they have the financial wherewithal from some really great partners. So that is part one. What's going to be very interesting to see is how are these business plans going to actually translate to reality, quite frankly. I'm optimistic about the ethos, what everybody's doing, how they're doing it. But like anything else, there will be winners and losers as to how people think about this. There are certain plans of attack, if you will, in terms of are the homes for cost passed, and then the cost to connect, are they realistic? Or how they think about passing the homes, is that realistic? Should they do aerial and buried? Should they just do buried fiber? And in some cases, it makes sense to do one or the other or a hybrid. Um, I think we're going to see in the next little bit, next year or two or three, how people have performed. We're already seeing it. And again, like anything else, there's winners and losers. But we are generally very encouraged by the development. It's very exciting, and that's going to just lead to, again, narrowing the digital divide, as you mentioned earlier on, and highlighting a lot of social good. This is a really good way to highlight ESG concerns and alleviate them. So we're very optimistic about this. The other thing I would say is fiber is helping with not just increased data that we're seeing, but networks are complex. There's more remote access. I think about hybrid work patterns. Think about mission critical applications that are going to the cloud. Um, Fiber provides superior bandwidth, reliability, and latency. And again, it really does have to do with the sheer technology behind it, right? It's light waves, and it's in protected kind of conduits and so forth if it's done correctly. And when you look at just some statistics, I think these are fascinating. There are what some publications call superpower users and extreme power users. Well, and a superpower user is 2 terabytes or more a month. And think about that relative to what you think about your wireless plan is, maybe it's unlimited, maybe it's not, but those are usually in gigabytes. These are terabytes. And then you think about extreme power users who are 5 terabytes or more a month. That's a lot of data. And a lot of the traffic is asymmetric, video games, other things like that. These categories are up 30% and nearly 80% year over year in terms of the number of users who are doing that. And that's remarkable. And that's not constricted to, urban players, right? And so that's really important.
So, looking beyond residential connectivity, what do you see as your outlook for the future of fiber?
Well, look, enterprises need it as well, and that's a very viable business model in some ways. Different economics, different unit economics, and different customers ultimately. But then you also have to think about there's fiber to the tower, which is another business in itself. Fiber amongst data centers, which we talked about, that's really important because how do you get the data to and from? Think about they truly are the information superhighways. And then think about subsea cables, where a massive amount of the world's data is actually done underwater, transatlantic, transpacific, through other bodies of water, that sort of thing. Those are very important. So the cables that are underwater, and then where the wet meets the dry, preferably on the beach or somewhere near there. This is also a very, very important ecosystem. And we're seeing a great deal, we have seen over the last 15, 20 years, whether it's hyperscalers, large corporates, telcos, that are using these, are building their own networks, building their own subsea cables that then go to data centers. And then the data goes from there. And then you need fiber networks that go up and down from there. What we think we're going to see, though, also is not just, and we're seeing more of this, is redundancy and building out for redundancy. So not one market that dominates, say data centers, or one dominant fiber route, although there are markets where there are one major one and maybe a second. We think in some markets you'll see two or three, or alternative paths, because redundancy and security are really important points. Not just cybersecurity, but the actual conduits and fiber routes and splicing themselves. So just some other future trends that we think, and quite frankly, they're ongoing right now.
So, finally, just kind of rounding this out, where should investors focus when it comes to public versus private fiber networks?
So in some ways, there are differences, and it's difficult to comment on in a forum such as this on those differences. I would say that we other investors, individual institutions, whatever it might be, you know, tend to look at the competitive dynamics at in the individual markets themselves. That's very important. Then looking at, can this team, and people are so important here, can this team do this? Has it done it? Is it doing it? Will it do it? Are the assumptions realistic? The math might look really good and they might look reasonable, as math, market share take rates, average revenue per user, cost per home pass. You could build a model with all these averages or even just below, and it looks great, and the returns look great. But practically speaking, when all is said and done, this is a doer business. It's people who do, and it's people who can get logistics done, people who can work with local municipalities, Department of Transportations, national parks as needed, that sort of thing, and homeowner associations. So if you're investing in a company or series of companies that has that in various geographies, that is one thing to certainly look out for. Those are the things that probably alleviate the risk the most. But again, it's not a prescriptive formula, but those are just some things that one might look at. We're big believers in the space. We think it's critical infrastructure, whether it's again, consumers, businesses, towers, data center, subsea. There are massive needs for this. This is really what moves the data, and this is what's going to get your traffic to me and all around. So this will be a constant presence in our lives going today and going forward. So we're really big believers in this whole ecosystem.